Hello, hello, hello. This is Marshall Goldsmith. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. I am so excited so excited to be with you today. And we have a wonderful guest, a very practical show. I think you're going to find stuff you can take back home and use. I'll briefly introduce myself. Then we will begin. My name is Marshall. I'm from a small town called Valley Station, Kentucky. Went to school in Indiana, got a PhD at UCLA, was a college professor and dean, and I travel around the world doing three things. One, giving talks or teaching classes. Two, coaching executives. I've had the privilege of coaching a lot of the top leaders around the world. And three, writing books and articles. And I've done 3 big New York Times bestsellers. So life is good. Life is good. And I've got a program called 100 Coaches, which I love. In this program, which was inspired by my friend Aisha Brissell, I decided to just adopt people, teach them all they know for free. And the only price is when they get old, they get to do the same thing. I thought maybe 15 people would get adopted, 100 would apply. 18,000 people have applied for adoption. I've adopted now a couple of hundred people. And if you go to just put 100, the number of space coaches in Google, you'll see who they are. Just amazing, amazing, amazing human beings. And some of the top CEOs, thinkers, all kinds of people, from athletes, Chris Cuomo, the CNN guy, just amazing human beings. And I've got a couple of them with me today. First is my comrade, Sanyin Siang. Now, you see, I used to be at #1 coach in the world back in the old days, but now I'm in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame, that's where they put old people. And the new Thinkers 50 #1 leadership coach in the whole world is my good buddy, Sanyin. Sanyin, take a second, introduce yourself, and we're going to get rolling.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sanyin Siang, and as the world's #1 coach, I work with leaders and their organizations to eliminate blind spots, build more cohesive teams so that they can thrive throughout uncertainty. And I work with CEOs, board directors, sports industry executives, and I am also the executive director of Duke University's Coach K Center on Leadership and Ethics at its Fuqua School of Business. And I'm also a mom. So before we jump into today's show, very important, we have, if you have questions, please type them into comments because we will get to your questions later on in the show. And also, as you're listening to the show and you hear something that you like, click on the like button, click on the love button. So if Marshall bursts into song and you love it, click that like button. Actually, if he bursts into song and you don't like it, also give us a reaction, click on this button, whatever that button is, because he needs that feedback too.
No.
Back to you, Marshall.
No, I don't like that. Just click the love button. I don't want any negative reviews. So just clicking the love button is better.
Given you don't like it, click on the love button. That's it.
Love. All love. Love is good. Love. All you need is love. Bop, 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 bop. Just click that love button. Love is better. Now, speaking of love, we got somebody. We have somebody I love on today's show. My friend, Dr. Frank Wagner. Frank is a wonderful human being. I've known him since we were kids, and 3 years old, however long ago. We've known each other almost 50 years. Frank is a wonderful friend. We both have PhDs from UCLA at the same time. By the way, Beverly Kay, one of the top career thinkers in the world, was there. David Ulrich, top HR people in the world. And by the way, none of us were considered most likely to succeed. So we all overachieved the low expectations the school had for all of us. So anyway, Frank is a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's been ranked the #1 coach trainer in the whole world. He's trained thousands of people on how to be coaches. He's a great coach in and of himself, and just a great human being. So Frank, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So Sanyin, let's hear it for Frank. Yay.
Well, thank you. And when you're talking about the love button, can one of the co-presenters hit the love button? Because I love both these people on both sides of me. And as Marshall said, it is funny, Marshall, you're pretty accurate. I mean, I specifically figured out, given when I met you and when your birthday is, that you were 23 when we met. And so, yeah, it's been a long time. And thank you so much, the two of you, for inviting me on this show. And what I want to talk about here is, you could say the new normal They could apply to almost anything, but our field is leadership and executive coaching. So what I do for a living is both coach, just like Sanyin does, and I train people to coach. And I train them in a very specific methodology, which we call stakeholder-centered coaching, which is really, if you look up higher, it's Marshall Goldsmith coaching. It's everything I've learned about this, I learned from Marshall. And, he had a wonderful place to learn it himself by, as you probably know, coaching. I mean, we're talking about people that are on the cover of magazines, news stories, and he's helped all these people get better. Now, our methodology is based upon something that's pretty unique. But before we get into that, what are the questions you guys have for me? Marshall, you got a question for me?
Number one, yeah, because you can't assume everyone listening understands what stakeholder-centered coaching even is. So just take 3 or 4 minutes, give us an overview of what is stakeholder-centered coaching.
Okay, thank you, Marshall. You can really kind of think about our methodology as following a discipline of 5 specific steps. First step is we work with leaders to improve their leadership. So they pick an area to improve, something that's meaningful to them and useful to them to become better. Now, once they pick this goal, the next thing is, which is unique in our methodology, is they determine who are the relevant key stakeholders. These are people that are interdependent with this leader, are affected by the leader's behavior, and work closely enough with the leader that they can pay attention and help this leader improve. And then finally, before we really get started, the leader meets with her or his manager to just make sure that they've got the right goal and the right set of stakeholders. That's step 1. Step 2, which is the natural next part of this, is stakeholders have to know they're going to be a stakeholder. So they have to be enrolled, enlisted, recruited. And this is, again, then becomes a unique thing. To be a stakeholder, you're told what the leader's goal is. So the leader is going public. They're being vulnerable about wanting to get better in something. And the stakeholders are explained what their role is. And the very first thing they're asked to do is to send 2 suggestions to the leader on how to achieve their goal, which leads naturally to our 3rd step. And our 3rd step is called action planning, which is pretty general in our field, or probably in anything. You got to build a plan if you're going to achieve something. Ours is stakeholder-centered planning. And it's built upon the input that is given by those stakeholders at the very beginning of the engagement. Then the plan itself gets sent to the stakeholders. So stakeholders know what the leader is working on and the steps they're going to take to get better. And this is largely built upon what they've suggested or Marshall invented in our field, feed forward on how to get better. Then the 4th step is really, this is the magic formula that Marshall discovered, is there's one thing that leads to successful improvement in anything. It's called follow-up. So our coaching is we help the leader with the discipline of checking in with their stakeholders, following up in a certain way. There's a right way and not a right way to follow up. Listen to what's being heard, saying thank you, reflecting upon it, and then changing their behavior and improving. And then the final step, which is again another innovation that Marshall brought to our field, which is measuring results. We actually want to know, did the leader improve in the eyes of these stakeholders that are involved in the middle of the process? So that's stakeholder-centered coaching.
Very good. Sanyin, do you have a good question for Frank?
Well, Frank, I was so thrilled to learn that your program, Stakeholder Center Coaching, was named the #1 coaching development program by Global Gurus. And by the way, I'm a stakeholder coaching certified coach. So, and I've used it to success of my clients. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Why do you think that you were named the #1 program? Can you tell us more about that?
Well, first of all, when I say something about this, and I'm remiss I didn't do this before, is, when Marshall introduced me as a kind of #1 coach trainer, that's not a solo award. I mean, I'm so fortunate to work with a team of people. My partner for many years, since 1986, Chris Coffey, who is so instrumental in what we do, and then Will Linson, who joined our team after about the first decade and has done, I mean, the most unbelievable job in bringing this thing worldwide. And in fact, when you ask, well, why did we get the award? I'd say to some extent, Will deserves the most credit from at least one reason why we got it. And that is, we are the #1 network of coaches around the world in terms of both size and in terms of, measurement of success. So, I mean, we have coaches in so many countries speaking so many languages. We have over 3,000 of them that are following one methodology, which again, I'll call it Marshall Goldsmith coaching. And we measure those results. Remember, that last step of our methodology, stakeholder-centered coaching, is we don't get to determine whether a leader improves. The leader doesn't get to determine whether the leader improves. It's an anonymous online survey conducted at choice points about whether or not a leader has improved. And I think, obviously, since we have measured success and we're the #1 coach network in terms of size and spread, that's obviously, I would assume, one of the reasons. Now, I mean, I don't know why we were picked. So I'm just doing my educated guess. The other thing that I think why we received the award is, we broke the mold of traditional coaching. Traditional coaching in our field, this is leadership coaching, executive coaching, is, a very experienced, with a great reputation, coach is hired to work with an executive, and they work one-on-one, and it's often done behind closed doors. Well, our methodology is vastly different. It changed the game. Our methodology is a systems approach, involving many, many people in the system, and it's a form of team coaching. So this adds much more value than just this one-on-one coaching. And part of that too, I think, is because, you put the coaching where it really belongs, out in the workplace. And that's where the value gets added, not by, some external resource going in to do this. Marshall wrote an article many years ago, I think it was 2006, if my memory is correct, called "It's Not About the Coach," right? It's all about the leader and the leader's interactions with their stakeholders. So, and then again, I've also mentioned, I guess I'll just give you one more reason for that, and that is that we actually measure results. It's evidence-based, what we do. So I think those are probably some of the reasons why we received this wonderful recognition.
Who uses stakeholder-centered coaching all the time. The one key insight I have in, why it's been so successful is that it's not just enough to change behaviors. We also have to change perception, and follow up and engagement of others' ownership in changing that perception is key. Now, so Frank, we are all dealing with COVID right now. Businesses are dealing with COVID. Why does coaching matter more than ever? And then what does that look like in the next normal? What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. And Sanyin, yes, thank you also for pointing out, that's one of the things we're proud of is, see, we don't just get involved in a leader changing and improving. It's the system changes and everyone involved changes. It's hard to change behavior. I think in an earlier broadcast that Marshall had with Dr. Jim Kim, Dr. Kim mentioned something that was beat into his brain, that, everything that we do with is simple yet not easy. And I think he said something like, it's not easy, this part that scares people. So, let's be real. This stuff is hard to change behavior, but it's equally hard to change people's perception in terms of this. Now, with COVID-19, you're absolutely right. Leadership is always important, and it's more important when things are tough. And that's when people really look for a leader. People want to follow people, and they want to follow the right people. So what we do is getting to become more and more important. The hard part about this, though, is with COVID-19, there are dynamics that we think will happen that to some extent is going to challenge our coaching. One of the major changes that are going to take place is not something that hasn't already been existing. and by the way, I think this applies far beyond just our field of coaching, is disruptive innovation and time compression. Now, these are forces that have been operating already, but I see COVID-19 as might say, the ultimate accelerator of these things. I mean, disruptive innovation has been around forever in the history of the human race, yet a lot of times a disruption and new innovation takes a long time to actually take place. But it does basically displace things. People do things differently. They buy things differently. They live their lives differently. Yet today, these things can happen almost in a nanosecond. And in the coaching world, as an example, technology, digital coaching has already gotten a huge foothold. And our belief is that's going to change. In fact, David Peterson, one of Marshall's first 25 at Google, I mean, he's great at saying, beware, artificial intelligence. Who knows what the future is going to bring? Now, I personally see technology and disruptive innovation in our field as both a benefit and you might almost say a curse to us. Now, and that's because of time compression. Now, time compression has two parts to it. One part is exactly what I've already mentioned, speed at which things happen. I mean, things are just happening so much quicker today. I mean, let's just look at how quickly the global economy, just has sunk in terms of this thing. I mean, 6 months ago, nobody would have predicted this thing that's happening. Speed is amazingly fast. So you've got to be, we all know this about being agile and, and all these kinds of things. Now, but the other part of time compression, which this isn't a human experience, is all of us are being asked to do more things in less time. And so here's the thing, coaching traditionally has taken time. And even though it's, as you said, Sanyin, it's, I think, increasingly important, people can say, I don't have the time to coach, right? If you're a leader, I don't have the time to hire a coach if I got this. So yes, and that's where technology, I think, is a gift to us, is it allows us to get things done, take away all the tasks that take time, but can be handled through technology. So we can do what's really important. And that's why when you look at coaching, any coach brings two things to the process. They have a game plan. They have a methodology that they use. And ours is just one of many. And I don't want to say ours is the best. I don't know all the other coaching methodologies. I just know I love our methodology in terms of the way I operate. Mm-hmm. But the other thing, they have to bring some content expertise. And I'll give you an example. When Marshall and I first went into the coaching world, it really wasn't coaching that we were doing. We were doing leadership development and training. And we had a wonderful, wonderful guru named Paul Hersey. And he had a methodology called situational leadership. So I remember as an early young guy in my 20s, going around to IBM, walking into a room with everyone that looked like my father and teaching something called situational leadership. So I was a trainer, not a coach. And I will say in 2020, I still use situational leadership in my work. So that's the thing that as a coach, you got to be aware of is, what am I bringing that adds value in terms of content expertise and in terms of a methodology?
Frank, very, very good points. One of our good buddies is Magda Mook. Magda is the head of ICF. And she had a really good conversation with me about ICF recently. And one thing I love about some of the changes she's initiated in ICF is really much more an openness to different methodologies. They used to have this philosophy of you never give advice to the leader. Well, that's no longer the case. Really openness to different methodologies. And a lot of great ICF people who are trained in kind of different ways to do different things today, which is a whole different level of openness that really wasn't there, I think, 20 years ago and is today. I think she's done a great job of leading ICF as well. Another comment is you mentioned several things about the coaching process. If anyone would like articles about the stakeholder-centered leadership coaching process or leadership as a context board that Frank mentioned, just send me an email. I'll be happy to send you the articles. My email address is Marshall, Marshall, @marshallgoldsmith.com. Now, Sanyin, my wonderful friend Sanyin, is also my memory. Sanyin, you brought up the idea of let's start any good questions from the chat group. So, any questions there, Justin or Brett?
Yeah, hey, this is Justin here from the Methods Network team. We have a couple questions. And speaking of the process, of the coaching process, Frank, there's a couple questions here for you that have been coming in. One comes from Vuyo Halimana. She's an L&D in Maidenhead, England. And Vuyo says, are the stakeholders always going to be internal to the organization, or could they be external stakeholders as well?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. See, whenever a person picks a goal, that really drives who should be a stakeholder. Now, I will say most of the time, most of the stakeholders are internal. But also when you say internal, they're internal, they're all getting a paycheck from the same organization. It doesn't mean they are on the same team. It could be different parts of the organization. Yet if a leader picks a goal that impacts people outside of the organization, absolutely, those will become valuable and appropriate stakeholders. So no, a stakeholder can come from anywhere. And in fact, Marshall can attest to this. Sometimes the stakeholder is the person's spouse, right? So, it's really fun for us. See, we don't determine who the stakeholders are. That's not our job.
Very good, very good. Sanyin, speaking of spouse, is your husband there, your fine partner?
He is working at the hospitals today. He's working at the hospitals. But let me just say, he gives me feedback, and he is definitely one of my stakeholders, along with my 3 children. But Frank, what you said earlier, it's really, we are in such a complex world, and it's about teams. It's no longer just about the individual leader. We also have to shift the system. And I think if there's one key takeaway for the listeners today is we're now operating as teams. We don't do this alone. We have to shift also the system, and we start with the behavior of the leader.
And Frank, the Business Roundtable just made a statement that said the role of the corporation today is not just to make profit. The role of the corporation is to benefit key stakeholders. Our good friend Hubert Joly, one of the graduates of your program, he is the vice chairman of the Business Roundtable. Former CEO of Best Buy, has been on our show before. And so Alan Mulally was on the Business Roundtable for years, was CEO of Ford, great guy. So this is the future. And the Business Roundtable is the top CEOs in the world said, you are now there, not just to make short-term profit. You're there to benefit a variety of key stakeholders. And our friend Alan Mulally is probably the best practitioner of stakeholder center leadership I've ever seen in my life. And so, he's just a great person. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah. Hey, Marshall. So in the spirit of being there, we have a question from Oscar Luna in Guadalajara, Mexico. In fact, he's, I think, a longtime viewer. I've seen his name pop up a few times. So good to have you here, Oscar. It has to do with leadership is about being close to our people. And now we're in a world where everyone is remote 24/7. So, how can we be, and he uses the word, let's say, remotely close with our people?
I love that phrase.
Yeah, it's funny how the term in the United States, I'm not sure how it's translated into other countries. In the United States was, with COVID-19, we have to have social distancing. And, and everyone immediately kind of adopted that because I think they realized that was going to be a tragedy of this thing it could easily be psychologically, if not physically, social distancing. But it's funny how now today, a lot of people will make that self-correction. They'll say it's really not social distancing, it's physical distancing. And when people work remote, forget about it. I mean, there are people who've been working remote before COVID-19 came in. And there are ways to be aware of and take care of those social needs and our relationship needs as human beings. And I'll just go back to really interesting. This goes back to almost the beginning of our coaching methodology. I won't mention the company, but it was a Silicon-based high-tech company in Northern California, and I was asked to coach a woman in Singapore who was responsible for tax in Asia Pacific. So her direct reports covered every country through Asia and South Pacific. And I was going to coach her using our Stakeholder Center coaching. And the goal she picked was improving her teamwork of her team. And she had already had a team meeting schedule where they're all going to fly somewhere. I forget where they're going to fly. And you know what happened? The semiconductor industry went into a downturn and all travel was canceled. So she had to basically not see her people face to face for a whole year that I coached her. And this was going to be a huge challenge. So we figured out ways to do things. And when I say we, meaning mainly her with her direct reports, her stakeholders. And I'll just give you, for instance, one thing she did is she asked every single person to send her the title of their favorite song. And then she put together a playlist and sent it back out to everybody in terms of what they were doing. So, you've got to be creative. You got to be innovative in the way you do things. But the reason why I used her as an example, this is a long time ago, was we measure results on a 7-point scale, -3 to +3, with the middle point 0 meaning no change. Did this leader improve? She was being asked by her direct reports, who she never saw face to face for a year, whether she got better. She is, to this day, the only leader I ever coached that got a 3.0 improvement, positive 3.0 improvement. She got a perfect score for improving. So if someone says this can't be done, I don't believe it.
Well, Dr. Frank, thank you so much for being with us. You were spectacular as expected. Sanyin, as always, you're wonderful. So, and thanks to the wonderful people at Methods who do just a fantastic job of getting this whole show organized. And Frank, great respects to Chris Coffey and Will Linson, your comrades, who are also justifiably part of the reason you guys won that award. So thanks to everybody. As I mentioned, send me an email if you want any of the articles. Love being with everybody here on LinkedIn Live. Take care of yourselves out there and see you later. Bye-bye.